Kansas got all the headlines yesterday, but the Jayhawks weren't the only favorite to fail on Thursday's card. No, you had a lot of underdogs barking. You had a lot of big upsets, but that was Thursday. Friday, well, today's card offers another whole set of challenges, a different set of possibilities, because today you have so many teams playing their third game in 3 days. You have a number of teams, because they earned double byes in their respective tournaments, who are going to be playing teams that are playing their second game in 24 hours, their third game in a 3-day stretch. And that, again, offers different challenges when you're handicapping the college tournament card. And I'll talk about some of those games with the 3 complimentary plays I've got coming your way in just a moment. Hi, everyone. DeMarco here, and this, of course, is going to be your Friday video report. Now, listen, guys, I've always said about the complimentary plays, which I have always done exceedingly well with in my 20 years here in the business. I refer to the college or the complimentary plays as the plays that are the best of the worst. And I say that somewhat jokingly because these plays, the complimentary plays, no matter the sport, are always the plays that were just something a little bit wrong with them, a little bit flawed. For one reason or another, they weren't the plays that I bet on. They weren't the plays that I released as the best bet on the website. And yesterday, case in point, I had 4 games after narrowing down a card that, my God, it seemed like there were 200 games I handicapped on Thursday after working all night and all morning, and then again, seemingly through Thursday's early afternoon, looking at these damn games. But there were 4 games I narrowed it down to yesterday, right? It came down to the games between Vanderbilt and Texas A&M, a red-hot Providence team that finished the regular season with 6 straight wins, taking on Creighton, a team they had beaten by 2 in Omaha in the regular season. Old Dominion against Marshall, and then Iowa against Indiana. And I could make a case for all 4 teams. And I went back and forth. And here on the video report, I told you that I loved Old Dominion and Marshall. And that was going to be my best bet until I saw how the line started moving in that game. And that got me off that game. And then I kept looking at Providence, but I kept thinking to myself, when's the last time I used Providence? When's the last time I won money with the Friars? And frankly, a team that had been up and down all season long, big deal that they won 6 straight games at the end of the year, just didn't inspire a lot of confidence in me. So I went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And one of the keys is that, sometimes you have to step back after you've handicapped a card, and you have to just kind of reevaluate. You have to kind of let it just settle, to let the dust clear, and then look at the card again a few minutes later and go, okay. Now, it's like having 4 children and then being asked, well, which one of those 4 kids do you love the most? Well, you couldn't do that. Well, at least I would hope most of you couldn't do that. But you have to do that when you want to just bet on one single game. And ultimately, it came down to me, a team that I talked about numerous times the past couple of weeks, a conference that I really didn't dip my toes in at all in the first 3.5 months of the season, the SEC, but one that over the past few weeks I had really just gotten my finger on the pulse of it. And that's why I ended up going on Vanderbilt yesterday. And once again, it was an easy win. Just like with Mississippi State over LSU the night before, Vanderbilt, I'm a 3-point favorite, rolls by 25 points over Texas A&M. And I won another top-rated 15-dime best bet release, number 19 out of 28, and my 3rd straight this week alone. Hell, my 5th straight overall in college, dating back to last week. So sometimes that's what it comes down to. And those other plays, hey, they took the collar. They went 0-3. Providence loses. Old Dominion gets upset by Marshall. Iowa gets hammered by Indiana. It sucks. The free plays went 0-3, but you know what? It happens. And again, sorry that they went 0-3, but again, my job is to find that one best bet for me to win money, and for you, if you're a client, to win money as well. Still 40 games over 500 with the free plays, but it happens sometimes. But that's the job. That's what you're supposed to do, to narrow down the plays and find the best one of them all. What I hate, though, when I hear handicappers say when they lose their best bet and they win their free plays, is that they keyed the wrong play. Oh, please, talk about people that make excuses. I can't stand that. Okay, let's talk about some of your games here today. Interesting game. Rhode Island. Here you go. Jesus. Talk about Providence. Now we're going to talk about Rhode Island. The Rams closed with 5 straight wins to end the regular season to put themselves in bubble contention. Regular season finale at home against Davidson this past Saturday. They found themselves trailing by 8 with 5 minutes and 6 seconds to play. They went on a 12-4 run to force overtime, and then they won that game 73-70. Now they're 21-9, 13-5. They finished in Atlantic 10 play. But in terms of victories with considerations against teams with good RPI, the only real win in the latter stages of the season was their upset of Virginia Commonwealth. Now, they're going to take on a St. Bonaventure team that on January 28th in their lone meeting this season, they beat up 71-59 as a 7-point home favorite. And they did it because of their defense. Now, the Rams shot a little over 45% in that game, but they held St. Bonaventure to 29.5%. And they blocked 15 shots in that game. I had to go and look at the box score twice because, 15 blocks in the game. I thought, who did they import from the NBA to play center in that game? But that's the truth. And St. Bonaventure's leading scorer, Jalen Adams, hit 4 triples, had 25 points. So it's not like he didn't show up. The bottom line is that the Rams, this is Rhode Island, number 36 in the country in terms of defense, 65.2 points a game they allow. That's the number 1 points per game allowance in the Atlantic 10. They give up 7 points less per game than St. Bonaventure. Bonnie coming off a 73-60 win over UMass yesterday, a UMass team that wasn't any good to begin with, that had beaten a bad St. Joe's team that had lost 9 of its 10 previous games going into Wednesday's first round action. Again, this is one of those situations where you have a Rhode Island team, much like Providence, that finished the regular season on a run. Providence, unfortunately, didn't deliver yesterday, but I do think Rhode Island's better positioned here because, again, Rhode Island can impose its will defensively on an opponent. And St. Bonaventure is a jump shooting team. That's how the Bonnies live and die. They can't work the ball inside because they don't really have much of an interior post presence. If the Rams can impose their will defensively, they're playing here on a nice little run. This is a Rams team that early in the season played so well, got upset, ironically, by Providence, hit a slump, then at the end kind of picked it up. So that's why I'm willing to lay the 4.5 points with them. Another Atlantic 10 game here. It's Dayton in the quarterfinals in Pittsburgh taking on Davidson. Now, Dayton had a 9-game winning streak snapped when they lost their season finale at George Washington on Saturday. They didn't even show up for that game. Now, could there be mitigating circumstances? Of course. Listen, I took Dayton on, when was it? Wednesday night when they were at home against Virginia Commonwealth, and first place was at stake in the Atlantic 10 for the regular season title and the number 1 seed here in the tournament, and Dayton got the job done, covering as a 4.5-point favorite in that game. So it was kind of a meaningless game other than carrying momentum in the tournament. But you talk about being flat. George Washington came out, scored 16 of the first 17 points in that game against Dayton in that contest. It was then 70-51 midway through the second half before Dayton, put on a little bit of a spurt to at least make it somewhat respectable. But 87-81, trust me when I tell you, that final score is not indicative of how dominant George Washington was in that game. Now, when Dayton met Davidson during the regular season, February 24th, it was on the road and they needed overtime, 89-82, and actually to prevail that, they needed to finish the regulation on a 17-5 run, even to force overtime in that contest. Now, Davidson beat LaSalle yesterday, 82-73 in second round play. You got 2 teams that were on the road. Dayton 7-3 on the road, Davidson 5-7 on the road. As I always like to say, maybe a neutral site game, but the fact is, if you're not playing and sleeping in your own bed, it's a road game as far as I'm concerned. You've got a Dayton team that is number 3 in the Atlantic 10 in scoring defense, averaging about a per game yield of 66.3 points a game. You got a Davidson team that gives up 5 more points per game. So when you look at the line, Dayton 5.5, it's pretty fair. You've got a Davidson team that relies on its outside shooting. If Davidson's on, it can put up plenty of points. You got a Dayton team that's not particularly strong down low, doesn't have much of an interior post presence either. But Dayton definitely is the better team. more pedigreed. I think in this spot, I'm looking for Dayton to rebound, especially after that no-show performance in their season finale. 5.5 points is not a unreasonable number for them to expect. They will have more fans and support here by virtue of their location. Dayton going to Pittsburgh as opposed to people coming from Davidson, North Carolina, heading up for this contest. Although Davidson did play yesterday, big deal. They beat a LaSalle team that plays absolutely no defense. And frankly, the fact that they only scored, I'm just looking up the final score yesterday in that game against LaSalle. What was it? Guys, I can't find the damn final score, what they beat LaSalle yesterday. They should have scored 85 points against LaSalle for as poorly as the Explorers played defensively in that one. Oh, they scored 82 yesterday. So, the fact that they even won that game, other than the fact that they got one game under their belt, Dayton has repeatedly proven this season they can certainly rise to the occasion. I think Dayton's going to be the play in that one. Your other game is the game between Michigan State and Minnesota. Now, I kind of find it interesting that after Michigan State just destroyed Penn State yesterday, I read a couple of headlines that real Michigan State showed up. The Tom Izzo's team is ready to play. That, the real Spartans showed their true colors yesterday. Seriously? I mean, listen, Penn State was playing its second game in 24 hours, okay? Okay, Michigan State played a big game, but big deal. They beat Penn State 78-51. This is a Penn State team that beat them at the Palestra in Philadelphia earlier this season. Lions shot 29%. They got out-rebounded by 15 boards in that game. Again, they were playing their second game in a 24-hour period. Michigan State shot 55%. The Spartans had lost their final two regular season games at Maryland and at Illinois. The same Illinois team that no-showed against Rutgers last Sunday, that no-showed again in the Big Ten tournament, okay? Michigan State now did take both regular season meetings against Minnesota. They won 65-47 at home back on January 11th. That was the second game during the regular season. Miles Bridges, who did not play in the first game, the talented freshman, scored all 16 of his points in the first half. Michigan State out-rebounded them by 3, and the Gophers are a very strong rebounding team. Minnesota couldn't hit the broadside of the barn, only shot 33% in that game. First game, Michigan State won at Minnesota, 75-74 in overtime on December 27th. They rallied from 13 points down at halftime. And that game, Minnesota again couldn't hit the broadside of the barn, 37.7%. Even though they out-rebounded Michigan State 46-39, the problem in that one, which is really weird when I went and looked at the box score, Minnesota, the better rebounding team, owned the boards in that game. Minnesota, though, only went to the free throw line 22 times, missed 12 of those shots. Michigan State, however, got to the free throw line 45 times. Didn't do particularly well, 31 of 45. That's why they were in trouble in that game. But kind of strange, because normally you would think that the home team would get more whistles going in their favor, especially when they're doing a better job on the board. But again, Minnesota only shot 37.7% in that contest. Now, since those two games, the Gophers have definitely gotten much better. Where Tom Izzo's team, and just kind of up and down depending on the day and who they were playing. Minnesota had won 8 straight games before having that winning streak snap with a loss at Wisconsin, 66-49 in their season finale over the weekend. And that was a Badgers team that had been slumping, but was in a must-win situation. This has been a one-sided series. Michigan State on a 23-5 straight-up roll. Here's the thing. Michigan State capitalized yesterday against a Penn State team that was playing its second game in 24 hours. Well, now you have Michigan State in Penn State's shoes, because now for the Spartans, it's going to be their second game in 24 hours. You have a Minnesota team that has just peaked in the second half of the season, coming off a loss, but both of these regular season meetings have been very physical, foul-filled affairs. And boy, try to say that quickly 3 times. Foul-filled affairs without slipping a wrong F word in there. Reggie Lynch, the big guy for Minnesota, played a combined 28 minutes, I think it was, in the first 2 meetings because he was in foul trouble. it's a tough number. Michigan State is a 1-point favorite. This is a Michigan State team that has played so well in the postseason tournament here the past few years. I think it's an interesting spot. I do, however, believe in this situation, Michigan State is one of these teams that simply has its opponent's number. And you find it all the time in college basketball, that no matter what the situation, one team simply owns another. And even though Minnesota's been playing well, I think in this spot, I'd rather take Michigan State because I think it helps the Spartans that they got the game under their belt. And it helps the fact that they won in Minnesota. They hammered Minnesota at home in East Lansing, and they've owned them over the years. So I'm going to go with Michigan State minus the 1 point in this one. Someplace it's a pick'em game. Michigan State's going to be your final free selection to go along with Dayton and Rhode Island. That'll do it for Friday. I wish you well, guys, and I'll talk to you again on Saturday morning when we do this one more time.